morning once again, back for another day of meteorology lab. And this was the view outside about an hour ago, just more clear skies, and I'm also trying out that chroma key, trying to get that working. So, looks a little bit better, but I'm still having some weird, that looks a little bit better. I'm getting some hot areas on that chroma key, and it's kind of giving me weird results, and I'm still kind of working with that, but I think by the time we do some of the radar stuff, when we get back into storm season, we should have that worked out. So let's take a look at the weather map. And I will let you know, I kind of am running on fumes. I had a couple of columns due last night, so I haven't slept since yesterday. But I'll be fine later tonight. All right, so here's the look at North Texas weather, and you can see we've got a front moving down in our area here. And we were looking at highs near 80, and the leading edge of the front roughly from about Fort Smith down to the DFW area and into the Central Texas area. So pretty much just like that. And you can see that is a dry front. So kind of a dry northerly flow, and dew points right around 30. Just give me just a second. Okay, voice doesn't want to cooperate there, but just got to get it warmed up probably here. Got a bit of moisture coming up from the Gulf. See those 60s dew points coming up from Houston and Victoria. We're going to probably see a little bit more of that overnight. Got a little bit of a weak low-level jet setting up down there on the coast. And let's take a look at the large-scale pattern across across the U.S. There's our front from around the Memphis area through Texas, and we see that this cold front is driven by a high-pressure area way up in the Dakotas. I'll pan that a little bit north, and you can see that cold air blowing on in from Canada. Got single digits up there in North Dakota. So northwesterly flow in place there. Let's see what's going on out on the west coast. Looks pretty quiet out in that area. Just have cool radiational cooling out in that area, and can't really find any fronts here, although when you go up into Oregon, easterly flow, and we've even got 36 knots there at Portland, so we've got a storm system right off the coast here, so we'll be looking for that on the weather charts. And let's just take a quick look up in the Canadian Arctic. Just want to see what's going on here. Looks pretty quiet. I've got a mix of old data in here, but I can see minus 18, minus 17. And Alaska looking fairly warm for this time of year. Temperatures in the teens and 20s out there. So let's head into our conventional weather maps and see what we got going on here. There's our temperature anomalies looking at East Texas, DFW, Houston, much above average, and here comes the front into Texas. High temperatures today, lots of 80s there in Texas, and even 90 there at Eagle Pass. So we've, believe it or not, when I was out there shooting that evening footage, I was getting bitten by biting insects, and I don't think I've ever seen that before late April in this area. 500 millibar flow, still got a bit of northwesterly flow across the continent, and a little bit of a Rex block off the west coast. And you can see that high pressure across the southeast Alaska area, and there's that low just south of that. So that is a blocking pattern, and we've got northwesterly flow working around the north and east side of that pattern. Jet stream runs from the Pacific Northwest into the Midwest and towards the D.C. Baltimore area. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go into the surface chart here in just a minute. Satellite showing pretty quiet conditions, maybe a little bit of a wave going across Kansas here, and things getting active out on the west coast there. A lot of cloud material there. Okay, let's check out the radar on AWIPS. It's kind of good to have this weather service tool here. The data is cached right now, but it is loading up. And we may see a few showers here out on the west coast. And while we're waiting on that, let me just see what's going on in chat here. Got quite a crowd, which is good considering it's a very quiet night. Let's see, I've got Fred here up in North Dakota, Michael, Jeff Lockwood, Mark checking in, and Lexi there. Also sharing some of the 80-degree weather here in Texas. So we got Andrew here and Kevin and Tom in Las Cruces, Sue and Mike Bexley, Brian Harp. Andrew says, sounded like Skyrim music to open up with. Yeah. Fred says, cold and dry there. Jason Boggs checking in there. All right. And we've got our radar data up. So a few showers there in the North California area. This is on the east side of that weather system moving onto the coast. All right, let's do the thermal analysis real quick. A lot of you are pretty familiar with that, and this is where we kind of establish the basics of frontal positioning. And the first thing that we look for is the banding of thickness lines, because that indicates a thermal gradient. And so we've got a very strong one there in Idaho and Yellowstone in the Tetons of Wyoming. And that extends eastward into the Midwest region right here. And of course, we're going to find the front on the southern periphery of that zone. So we can pretty much drop that in the trough right here. This is a low. And you can also see kind of a low here. I haven't really emphasized this too much in previous webcasts, but you're going to try to place these fronts in these troughs here. So there you go. It goes into Texas just like that. And then banked up against the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. Then up through Wyoming and over to the Snake River Valley. And then over to, looks like southern Oregon here around Crater Lake. So there you go. That's the extent of the polar front at this time. And I guess we can bring that offshore here a little bit. Could be a new frontal zone reforming along the central coast, maybe right in that area. A little bit of banding right there. And I would expect the slow here to be kind of occluded because it's been out there for about 4 or 5 days, and I would expect the air to be somewhat homogenized in that low. All right, the core of the polar air over the Hudson Bay region right up here. Centered right there on the Winnisk, I think that's the name of it, town up on the Hudson Bay region. A First Nation settlement right there on the Hudson Bay coast. And I actually like getting on, I don't know how many of you use Google Earth and Panoramio and go traveling. I like taking that to some odd locations like way out here and way out here just to see what's out there. Yeah, this area right here is quite interesting. Can't imagine living in that part of the continent. All right, we'll take a look at a few soundings. We should see that wind shift take an effect there at Fort Worth. Don't have a sounding. Looks like Wyoming is broken, so we'll switch over to UCAR. I was ready to go on that one. And there's the Fort Worth sounding for 0Z. Looks very dry and very low relative humidity. It looks like a very weak subsidence inversion right here. You can see kind of like a little bit of divergence. Maybe divergence isn't the right word, but a little bit of spreading of the temperature and moisture out here. So that's indicative of maybe some sinking motion in the mid-levels right here, up at about 12 to 15,000 feet. And elsewhere, if you look at the wind plots, we can pick up one little plot, no, maybe two or three of northwest winds right there. So we can use that to figure out how deep the air mass is. So it looks like it tops out right about there. That's going to be at about maybe 3,000 feet. And another way we can pin that down we can go to College DuPage and look at the VWP, the NEXRAD velocity wind profile. So I'm going to go to their satellite and radar products, pull up the NEXRAD sites, and take that down to Fort Worth. Then all we have to do is pick that out of the product menu, scroll down, and we get this, I'll try to show this to you. You can see that VAD product right there. Just click on that, and that gives us a plot of radar observed winds. And we can see that that cold layer tops out maybe about right here. So that's going to be just a little bit above 4,000 feet. And then we can look at time trends, go back earlier, a couple of hours. This is about 6 p.m. Looks like maybe it topped out here. So we can see it kind of very slowly growing over time. And this is not a very particularly shallow air mass. 4,000 is pretty good considering it came in just tonight. So we should see a little push of cold air coming from the north. And you can see this ND here. This is no data. So there's no scatterers to reflect velocity back to the radar. And the way this is constructed is the radar actually looks at the reflectivity, or not the reflectivity, it looks at the velocity. Maybe I'll show that to you real quick here. There you go. It takes into account this setup right here. And you can see that there's no scatterers further than about 40 miles from the radar. This is about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. Of course, keep in mind that the radar beam kind of shoots upward with increasing range. So right around here is where it hits about 5,000 to 6,000 feet. And there's no scatterers above that, no insects, no pollen, no dust or anything like that. So we don't have any wind data at that level. Now, there are some strategies you can use to compensate for that. You can take it into clear air mode, and you get a lot slower sampling of the volume. And when you do that, you can probably pick up another maybe 5,000 feet in this kind of air mass. But how do we calculate that velocity? Or that direction and velocity? Well, one thing you can do, if you want to try to do this manually, well, the radar site is right there. You just track the zero line. The zero line is this gray thing right there. And don't worry about that. That's the front. So pretty much you just keep in mind that as you go away from the radar and go down this line like that, you're getting higher and higher. And the way you get direction is you basically take a line from, say, that plot to the radar, and then go perpendicular to that. So at this level right here, you're looking at a north wind. And at this level right here, you're looking at a little bit more of a northeast wind, kind of like that. So the radar has its own way of figuring that out. It actually maps this on a azimuth, azimuth velocity scale. And from that, it tries to fit a sine wave over it. And from there, it comes out with the height figures, or the plotted data that you see in that other graphic. But this zero line is one way that you can use to get velocity or directional data. And then the velocity, you just look at the higher values upstream into the wind like that. And you can set your cursor over that in GR level 2 or GR level 3 and read out the values. And that'll give you your magnitude on the wind direction, or the wind speed. Sorry, like I said, I've been up about 36 hours here. Okay, so that's a quick lesson on VWP there. Okay, back to the presentation. Let's see what's going on with that system we were talking about last night. We were looking at maybe around the 8th or 9th possible system in the Great Lakes. And that all depends on what's happening up along the north slopes of Alaska. So here's this trough we were talking about right there. So what does that do? Well, it shears off and we get a low off the British Columbia coast. Okay, we saw that last night. This is on the 4th. But what happens after that? Well, it looks like that low sits there and spins. By the way, this is up at 500 millibars. Sits there and spins, and then it opens up on the 6th. Okay, we get a little bit of a jet max through here. So what happens after that? Well, it looks like we're getting maybe a little bit less of a digging trough. Maybe some of the energy coming a little bit further north than it had it last night. And you can see the impact is mostly up in the Great Lakes area, and fairly zonal flow here through the southern U.S. So it looks like there's been a kind of a slight northward shift to the storm track. Then after that we get into kind of a zonal flow here. This is on the 11th and 12th. And oh yeah, I think Chaser Khan is getting within range here. And there it is, Friday at noon. It's got a big ridge over the central U.S. This is pretty far out, so, we'll wait and see on that. But the main thing is, looks like overall, a lot of the jet stream energy coming out of the Pacific here. So I think that'll take us up to the GFS forecast, and we'll just go ahead and run through that here. Okay, so there's the current picture. Looks like a little bit of a low here around the Tyler, Texas area. So we got the front dropping in back behind that here in Texas. And there you can see the cool air kind of building in overnight. And by the time we do the webcast tomorrow, on Thursday evening, some of that cold air has pushed south all the way to the Gulf Coast right there. But it looks like it doesn't make much progress into the high plains here in Colorado. So it looks like the Rockies, Intermountain region, still under the influence of that stagnant mild air mass here. But we can kind of see the 540 thickness line creeping southward a little bit over the next few days. So here's Friday. We see the 540 line coming south. It looks like it kind of stops there on Friday evening. So that's the air mass modification kind of setting in there. And also the warm air advection because we're getting on the west side of this high pressure here. Keep in mind we've got clockwise flow around that high. So your cold air advection area out here in Georgia, this is on Friday night, and warm air advection setting up across Texas. And if we were looking at chase weather, if this was April maybe, this is where you would look for a low-level jet starting to set up. Right there in the Rio Grande region, the Pecos River Valley area. So that's where we first start seeing the low-level jet forming, and then it kind of builds into the San Angelo, Midland, Amarillo area, and then it maybe a day or two after that, then we see it on the I-35 corridor. So, warm air advection pattern setting up over the weekend. Should see a warm up in Texas once again. Then we get another little Alberta clipper working through the Midwest here. But all our eyes are out on the Pacific Northwest right here. That's where the big weather maker is coming together for the 9th and 10th. So for Sunday evening's webcast, looks like pretty quiet, kind of a slowly modifying air mass and a bit of a lee side trough setting up in Colorado. Here's that Pacific system. Maybe I'll shift the view just a little bit. There we go. So for Monday, here's the system in Saskatchewan. I don't know if that's the main system right there. Yeah, it looks like at least part of it is. I think maybe the tail end is what we're watching here. Things getting busy there in Northern California here. Again, this is Monday night, so more rain for Northern California. Then for Tuesday night, there's our Great Lakes system. I guess that's it right there, coming on out of the Dakotas. And there's the tail end of that. And it looks like the snow line, according to the GFS here, looking at that for northern Michigan and central Wisconsin. So it looks like it has really toned down the intensity of that low and brought it further north. So maybe I'll take a quick look at the Canadian model and maybe the European to see what those are doing. But in any case, in the wake of that, here's the cold air advection coming in the backside. Maybe some showery activity there in Ohio, in Indiana. Cold front kicking southward through the plains. And then by Wednesday evening on the 9th, or the 8th, good cold air advection coming down, almost to Texas here. So Thursday the 9th, high pressure settles in, kind of a migratory high, shifting southeastward, and then looks like a new system starting to develop there in Alberta. So I'll just kind of take this forward because I think we're already having some problems there at the 168-hour point. So anything past that is just going to be kind of a guess. But it looks like, a couple systems moving west to east here. And coming up on ChaserCon for the 15th, 16th, 17th. 17th is the ChaserCon day. Very quiet for Colorado. Just kind of a weak lee side trough. And if you're, I don't know how many of you are going to ChaserCon. I'm going to try to do the broadcast from there. That might be kind of fun. And the good thing is, I guess if you're flying in there, you're not going to have to contend with the airport being shut down. That's always a big worry when they do these things in February. And we had a big snowstorm back in, I think that was 2002 or 2003, and that massive cold wave back in 2006, that was really something. And February is always interesting out there. Oh yeah, we were going to check out the European model. Let's do that real quick and see what that's forecasting. For the European model, I use this website called Meteo Center with the European spelling. And they've got all the important fields here, that and some German and French and Japanese models. So here's the 850 chart here for the European model. And I'm looking this over to make sure it's the correct run. So yeah, that's this morning. And let's see what that's got for later in next week. Okay, February 7th. We've got the system out over the Dakotas here. If you're looking at, this is 850 millibar winds and temperature. So there's the Bear Clinic low right there over South Dakota. Warm front, something like that. Cold front, kind of like that. Okay, so that's the 850 millibar setup on February 7th at 12Z. Then February 8th at 12Z carries that eastward to southwest Michigan right there. So Bear Clinic low right there. Looks like the European model is still going with a solution a lot like last night's GFS. So it looks like maybe a little bit of disagreement with the models there. And I would expect them to kind of flip-flop for at least another few days here. And let's see, after that it kind of blasts most of the cold air to the southeast. Mostly east of the Mississippi, and actually mostly just the northeast U.S. here. So that's depressing for here in Texas. I'm getting sick of this warm weather. Let's check out the Canadian model and see what that's got. Let's see, how do I get there? I'm going to go over to Pivotal Weather and pull it up that way. GFS, go to the GDPS. And let me see if I can get to that panel without waiting for all this stuff to load. Yeah, looks like we did that. Okay, so February 8th at 6Z, bringing that through Iowa. This looks a little bit closer to maybe the European model, I think. Then the 8th at 18Z going through Indiana and Ohio. Very strong cold front coming into Texas. Okay, yeah, this is more European model. And then the 9th at 6C, very strong system going into New York there. So it looks like we got ourselves a little bit of a mystery here. European and Canadian, more pessimistic. And the GFS bringing the system a little bit further north than it had it yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see which way things work out for tomorrow. Okay, let me take a last look at the chat here. Just make sure I got everybody's messages checked out here. Fred thinking of going to ChaserCon, and looks like not too many people are able to go. There's IndianaCon in November, so that might be worth Googling for those of you in Ohio and Indiana, Illinois, surrounding regions there. Yeah, Central Iowa. I haven't been to that one in about 20 years. So I might have to make that one sometime soon. Had no idea that one was still going. Okay, Fun with Tech just signed up for ChaserCon. All right. Hello to Thomas Fortner there, checking in a little bit late. Ancient Astronaut back with us. And yes, I do need to move to North Dakota. It's starting to look that way, the way these winters have been lately. Okay, guys, I guess you know what the music means. I guess I'm pretty much done. I appreciate you watching, and hope we'll see you tomorrow. And I'll get some sleep, and have a good evening, guys. Thanks.